Hello and welcome to the Subbud Podcast, your entry into the land of no easy answers, as we journey through the vagaries of the mind, attempting to unravel the mysteries of why our brains brain.
Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. If you're still with us, thanks.
Hi.
Hi. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Do it now. It's right there. It'll take you 2 seconds. It's not hard.
I keep going off screen with this. It's over here somewhere, isn't it?
Somewhere. Everyone get up, search your house or
was...
car or wherever you are right now to find that
to
subscribe button. It likes to hide, apparently.
We should just have it bouncing around.
Find it, get it. I'm trying to subscribe, but I can't. It's just a puppet holding it.
Yeah. That does sound like an option YouTube would put onto there.
Yeah, exactly. YouTube, are you listening? We know you are.
I'm trying to click on... What is going on here?
Well, wherever you're subscribing and listening, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What are we talking about today?
Well, as it happened, we were kind of talking about stupidity and intelligence and that kind
So
of
this
thing.
all tied in nicely then.
Yeah.
Good. I like when that happens.
Just going into animal intelligence and, how nice it would be to not necessarily have the intelligence that we have at times, hey? I mean, it would make life a lot easier to just be a cow standing in a field only thinking about eating and pooping. I mean, wouldn't that make life just so much moo? Moo.
Isn't that what Nietzsche said?
Just moo. Just moo.
Just moo, everyone.
Life
would be easier if we could just moo.
No other concerns. Just moo.
Yeah. I do kind of envy that. I mean, it's easy for us to be like, dumb animals. But, I mean, come on. What a life. Mm-hmm. You don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to make money. You don't have to pay taxes,
But it's so funny because isn't that kind of like what we use as an ideal for our retirement is essentially just sitting in a field somewhere and just staring up at the sky and just being like, moo. Moo. Just feeling all the weight of all this thought and intelligence fall off of our shoulders and just get to just be like moo.
True. Yeah.
And that I think is kind of an ideal state.
So it's kind of funny that's like our goal for life. We struggle so hard the entire way through,
run and fight
to end up like a cow. But why can't we just be like the cow the whole time? Why do we have to struggle through to end up like a cow that our whole lives we spend like making fun of to be like, dumb animal, but I want to be you at the same time. Mm-hmm. I love you, but I hate you.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the point of the, here in the land of no easy answers. It's, the
question today, would you like to be a cow?
We had
Comment below.
We had almost a streak going of being able to actually point to some sort of definitive answer on the last couple, and I don't think we'll find one on this one. I think it's going to be pretty...
I think it's pretty easy, yes. I would want to be a cow. That sounds great. But like a free-range cow. I don't want to be like a cow in a, obviously...
Yeah, there's definitely better times to be a cow.
Now is not a good time to be a cow, people.
To be a cow, yeah. North America, right about now, not a good time.
No. Free range. I want to be like a cool Highland coo.
Yeah, in India, they're like gods over there.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, so they get to go wherever they want over there.
But it's an interesting kind of question to pose to you guys and to talk about as well. It's, if all of this intelligence, apparently, that's arguable, I suppose, that we've developed and evolved into, is it worth it? The payoff for it, right? So we've left behind kind of this just really easy existence as animals, not having to explain ourselves or make excuses or prove ourselves, right? We could just exist and eat some grass and take naps all day.
Yep.
I think, and occasionally run away from predators. I guess there's that, but we left that behind in favor of this. And was that a good trade-off? What do you guys think?
Yeah, is the development of a larger brain that allows us things like philosophy only really kind of leading to the philosophy of shit, of us now having to wade through this, okay, I guess now we've got to question our existence here or something, think about a god and how, right, like go make telescopes to try to see what's right? I mean, instead of just being able to just stare up at the sky and go stars. Pretty stars, you know, like, you know, does it make our existence better to have that, you know, philosophical, you know, wanting for something different? I mean,
Well, I feel like what this like brain has done, it's evolved us to question our existence. Which arguably, I mean, we don't know this for sure, but arguably animals don't have this needing to question their own existence.
yeah, I mean, the octopus that, you know, is its whole life cycle is essentially to get pregnant, you know, hide in a hole and protect her eggs until essentially she dies. I mean, at what point while she's sitting in there, you know, is she actually questioning, like, is this really the best thing that I should be doing? Like, you know, is this
Have I wasted my life?
Yeah, is this fulfilling the goals that I had for when I was hatched? You know, like, you know, I really wanted to make something of myself when I was hatched, and now I'm just sitting here, you know, guarding this, just literally just sitting here breathing on this clutch of eggs for them to survive for the next 3 months here. I'm just gonna do this, I guess. Okay, cool. You know.
But this is something I've always thought, and I know I've talked about this probably too much on the show, but this idea of of humans having to constantly like prove their existence and be better, and we've come up culturally of like one type of human because of what you've done with your life is better than another type of human because of what they've chosen to do with their life, right? And I've always found that a very strange thing because again, we're not questioning that with animals, right? It's just a sheep. Yeah. Right? We're not like, oh, that sheep made poor life choices.
We're not trying to dress it up in an outfit.
If only that sheep went to sheep university, like his brother Steve over there.
Exactly.
Steve, he did shit with his life.
Right?
You know? We're proud of Steve, but, you know, fuck you, Bob the sheep.
Bob's just over there wallowing in his own shit, and meanwhile Steve has 3 degrees, is wearing a tie. I mean, how he put the tie on with no fingers, we don't know, but he's got his glasses on.
He just inserted into the little, you know, like the cloven part.
He gets up every morning, he gets his little briefcase, and he goes off to whatever sheep do for work.
That's a good sheep.
Yeah, exactly.
A good sheep. You're a shit sheep.
You know? And that's, you know, and again, like, that sheep isn't sitting there going, you know, like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Right? Like, is this why I was put on this earth? You know,
and gets fluffier.
Do they have existential crises? You know, like,
maybe they do.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we're laughing about it, but maybe they are sitting there going like, why am I here? What is my point to exist in this world?
You know, and that absolutely speaks a lot to, you know, you look at octopi, you look at crows, you look at a lot of these animals, that the more we test them, the more we're finding, wait a minute, no, there's something going on in there, right? Yeah. Like, you know, they can make tools, they have language, they can speak to each other, right? Like, they know each other by name in a lot of cases, or by at least look, right? Like, you know, there's so many, you know, they apparently have a sense of self. They've been able to show that you know, crows and ravens can apparently recognize themselves, let alone can make decisions into the future, right? They'll you know, do things that essentially that don't benefit them now, right? But a year from now, there it is for them, you know?
That's cool.
Yeah, you know, like ants that keep pets, right? Like ants that have, I believe
ants keep pets.
Yeah, they keep...
like what, little gnats?
I'm trying to remember. It's basically something that eats all the other things that try to get into, like, the larvae of other things that might try to invade the nest. They'll keep them out.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Or like I think there's like a spider who'll keep little frogs. Right, like there's all sorts of these little weird symbiotic relationships of animals.
You just see a spider walking its frog on a leash. Just taking the frog for a walk.
Yeah, and the frog will eat all the things that try to get to the eggs, right? And the spider protects the frog from whatever might be trying to... And it's this gigantic spider protecting this little tiny frog.
Cool.
Right? You know, all sorts of those kind of symbiotic relationships that you just go like, how'd you guys figure that out?
Yeah.
Right? You're supposed to be a stupid animal. How'd you get that? Right? You know, they, like, octopi are known like escape artists. Yeah. Right? If you leave just a little crack open in their habitat, they're gone. Right? And they'll only find you by watching the cameras of how you got out after, like, the next day, when they're like, oh shit, wasn't there supposed to be an octopus in there? Woo! Yeah. You know, and that's, you know, so more and more we're just finding that maybe we're not at the top of this thing. You know, maybe we've put ourselves here by accident, or, you know, because we're hubris more than anything. Yeah. Right? Just this feeling of superiority, right? This God told us that we can do whatever we want with the plants and animals, and so I guess that's just what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know?
I have had that thought a few times as well. Like, we're maybe not the most intelligent species out there. We just like to think we are. And it could be someone else. Maybe it is the cows. Maybe they're just sitting there like, dudes, just bide your time. It's cool. They'll kill themselves off soon enough. It's all good.
Yeah, you know, I mean, like, does all of this advanced thought actually make us smarter? Right?
Yeah,
Or,
that's the
you know,
question.
or is it just a matter of perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like, from the perspective of an ant, is it just useless, right? Like, why would you even contemplate why you've been put on this earth? We're just here to just do this. Like, we walk
Yeah.
this way, we go get the food, we bring it back. What are you talking, right? Like,
It is a funny thing that we do contemplate this our whole lives, and obviously this is the whole point of religion, and actually most of the wars and strife in the world is because of this thought, is why are we here, and people trying to answer it. So arguably, yeah, it is actually the most useless thought that we've had, because one, we can never know. And that's it. So we'll spend our whole lives, we'll kill each other over it, we'll judge harshly, we'll be shitty to other people, based on something that we won't know until it happens. Ever.
and even then,
How
right?
stupid
Like,
is that?
the idea that God is waiting for us after we die to be just like, hey buddy, how's it going? Come on in. Yeah, we got this place. As
Yeah.
opposed to it just being a, right? Like, you're in this just rush of the universe kind of thing, and you
I
never.
mean, well, who knows? Again,
right? Like,
until it happens, we'll have absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
So the whole the point that we sit here and think about it, and like we go through these existential crises. People actually just go into deep pits of depression. People kill themselves over these types of things, right?
who am I?
And it's just, it is actually baffling. Like, we are kind of the idiots if you think about it. Because it's so futile. You just don't know.
Yeah, yeah. You're never going to see an orca, like, wandering off the edge of a cliff being like, I can't handle it anymore. You know, and not to downplay anybody's plight in any way,
No,
right?
no.
Like, you know, we understand that there's no easy answers to this thing, and it's one of those problems of, you know, like, does it benefit us to have this brain? I mean, sure, in a lot of ways it does, but it's also, you know,
It's a cause of so much suffering.
you know, it's most of our energy use in the day. It's this gigantic just heat sink inside of our, you know, like that basically the entirety of this body is essentially a slave to our brain, right? Because we have to basically feed this thing in order to keep on going.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, we're not feeding our stomachs, we're not feeding our muscles, we're feeding this brain to keep us running. That's the only thing that, you know, without that, all this other stuff is extraneous. Right?
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, an animal doesn't have that, right? Like, it just is, you know, and I think a lot of cases, you know, this structure here has taken us out of is and has given us this what you know,
Yeah.
like, you know, what's that, what's this, you know, an animal doesn't necessarily have to think about, you know, why this does this, right? It just kind of knows that it does, you know. The crow doesn't have to know that, you know, the reason that it pulls up is because the physics of the friction behind this lifted it, you know. Like, all it has to know is if it bends that stick, it can use it as a tool to pull that up and get the food that it wants, right? Or get the grubs inside the tree or whatever, right? And there's you know, who knows, you know, maybe they are really, you know, considering the plight of the grubs as they're eating them, right? Like, I'm really sorry, little grubby, nom, 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 nom. Right? You know, and really having that talk with their God, you know, like, thank you, God, for this food, right? You know, yeah, the crow God is probably spectacular, I'm sure, you know, like iridescent
sounds
wings.
cool.
Yeah, actually be.
That'd be great. I'll take that, God.
Ooh, shiny. yeah, that's yeah, it's either crow or sea otter. I think it'd probably be my spirit animals. Ooh, what's that? Yeah.
So what do we think is the advantage then? What is the point of us having evolved this? Even if there is one, maybe it's just an accident. Just like, whoops, we were like a genetic mutation that probably shouldn't have existed.
Yeah,
maybe?
because it
I
does
mean,
really kind of beg that question of like, does this really benefit, right? Like, I mean, arguably, we wouldn't have any of this without, you know, and that I think, you know, really does kind of speak to the end goal here, you know,
of
in
course.
that.
But does this make us happier?
Well, and I don't know that happiness is the goal, and I think that's a thing that we've kind of lost touch with in this society that we've built, is that it's not necessarily supposed to be a happy place. You know, this idea that we can remove all the sharp edges from everything and everybody gets to live this happy existence where nothing bad ever happens, that's just the stupidest bullshit I've ever heard. Like, how are you supposed to live a life where nothing ever happens to you? What kind of, right? Like, what are you really trying to accomplish there?
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to having a life where you're equipped to deal with stuff as it happens to you. You know, that I think is a distinction that we really have lost in this society is, you know, like not taking away all the sharp edges so nobody ever hurts themselves, but how do you deal with it when you get hurt?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do you deal with it when that person who hasn't gotten enough sleep today treats you like a complete asshole for no fucking reason whatsoever? How do you deal with that? Do you lash out in the same response, or do we have other means of, right? Like, you know, there's a lot of this stuff that just kind of seems a side effect of a lot of these things that we just don't understand yet, right? And as much as having the means now, you know, like fMRIs, the idea that we can now actually just have scans of our brains still just is amazing. You know, like we've never had this technology. We've never had the ability to, you know, the James Webb Telescope is now telling us that apparently the Big Bang Theory is kind of a questionable thing now. They don't know if it's the same, right? Like there's questions about it now that they, you know,
We have nothing but questions.
and
That's
that's
it as a species. Like, we never, land of no easy answers.
hey.
There's never any answers. We just have more questions. If we answer one, there's just more on top of that and on top of that. So I feel like it's a never-ending cycle
Yeah.
of just questions. Why? But why? It's like a kid,
Yeah.
right? But why? And you answer, but why? But why? But why? But why? So we're just kind of stuck in this weird loop.
Well, see, and again, like a lot of people consider that to be a failing, but that's actually a feature of this thing, right? Like the kids asking why, it's a feature of being a kid.
Yeah.
It's because they have that curiosity. And unfortunately, as an adult, a lot of us are, you know, we have had that curiosity beaten out of us. And so in a lot of cases, we take that out on our kids who are, again, just expressing who they are as kids. They're curious about things. They have questions. Of course, they're going to be asking why.
Yeah.
Right? And the idea that we just, whatever, you'll figure it out later, you know, instead of taking it as an opportunity to really, you know, help
So maybe
them
the
grow.
point is, like, we're supposed to keep expanding.
Absolutely.
And I think what we do is we put all these limitations on ourselves, right? That we need to answer these questions, and we need to believe this, and we need to act in this certain way, and this is what it means to be a good human.
Yeah.
When really we've probably evolved to keep expanding, and we just stop ourselves short all the time.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing. Why do we do that? Why wouldn't we want to keep expanding? Why have we made it such a bad thing to ask questions? Right? And
Yeah.
especially nowadays, this is a very relevant question because you can't ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
And why do we want to put a stop to that? Why would we want to stop our brains from evolving?
Well, I think a lot of
Is it to
that
go
again
back
comes
to being
down
a
to
cow?
the limitations of our brain, right? In that, you know, I like my brain cycle theory of brain management,
Yeah.
right? Where you get so many cycles during the day, and if most of them have already been tied up with all this other stuff, that question of why is just too much. I just don't have the capacity to fit that into my cycles,
Right.
right? And so, unfortunately, as a brain issue, right, you just don't even have the capacity
Well, because
in a
we're
lot of
tying
cases.
up our cycles with things that don't matter.
And that's exactly the problem,
Right? Like, it's ridiculous when we use, like, the sheep analogy of, like, oh, the sheep that's all dressed up and goes to work and has the degrees and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, everyone would agree that's ridiculous. But these are the things we're wasting our own brains on, is having these sorts of appearances.
And in a lot of cases, that's something that's unintentional. The phone, every time it beeps, right, that pulls you out of.
Yeah.
Right? That's now something else that's a cycle that you now have to devote to, right? Not only going, oh, it's a ping, what is it? Who is it from? All these, right? Now you've got to deal with that instead of actually just still dealing with what you were trying to deal with in the first place, right? Which leads to the procrastination, which leads to the stress, which leads to the, you know, the constant questioning of who we are. Are we doing, was this what I'm supposed to be doing? Who knows, man, right? Like, you know, it's tough to be able to pinpoint where you are supposed to be if everything around you is telling you're supposed to be doing something else,
Yeah.
right? And so how do you focus on, how do you find the things that are worth focusing on? How do you cut out all those distractions? How do you make it so that you can actually, like, find your moo? Like,
yes.
seriously, like, and that's I think a good analogy for this is just how do you find your moo? That just time where you can just go moo. Right? Like, and just
do you think we're starting
completely...
a movement?
Hey, if we can, if that, yeah. I mean, I'm sure we'll start far stupider movements.
I can picture the merch now. It's gonna be great.
Absolutely,
Join
exactly.
the
Join the movement. The movement. Yeah. Moo, like four O's.
Our protests will just be us in a field eating grass.
Yeah. Slow down. Take the time for yourself. That I think is a lot of the lessons that we learned, I think, from the pandemic as well, was that, these companies aren't going to do it for you. As much as they want to say that they're family oriented, here for you, all of this, I mean, in the end, they just wanted their profit.
Yeah, of course.
We gave them buyouts, they took them and didn't pay their employees, didn't make things better for their people, didn't ensure that this wouldn't happen to them again. They decided to pay themselves and their stockholders. And the idea that we're now going to prop them back up again.
But they have our best interests at heart.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly.
I mean, Walmart has always just been for us.
Walmart
right?
has always been there for me.
Yeah.
In my darkest of times, I knew I could turn to Walmart.
Mm-hmm. And it makes it tough to not envy a cow at times. To not envy just that ability to just not have any of this, right? Like no
but
alarms.
Does a cow get 1-day Prime delivery?
If a cow wanted it, I mean, I'm sure Amazon is trying to develop a means of talking to the cows right now, so they can find out.
That wouldn't even surprise me.
Yeah, neither. I mean, Elon has his neural net that he's trying to actually connect computers to brains, but the Amazon, I'm sure he would just do it on the nobody's gonna know kind of, right?
Oh yeah, until it's already there.
Exactly. It'll be you'll just be driving through a field and you'll see a bunch of cows with like these headsets on doing a choreographed dance down the right? And you'll be like, oh, what's going on? Yeah. No, that cow's got a degree. What? Physics? Like, cow knows physics? How is that even? Oh, okay, sure. Cow's a rocket surgeon? I mean...
Maybe the cows have gone through all of this before and then they decided it was too much and they just went to being...
Well, they've just found the smartest person in the world, apparently, is this 11-year-old autistic boy. Right? So, this even goes into our definition of intelligence to begin with. Back in the day, autistic kids were considered to be deficient.
Yeah.
And now we're finding that in a lot of ways their brains operate far faster and on far like orders of magnitude better than most of us.
Yeah, we're just trying to make them behave in this very particular way that we've defined, because again, it's all about how we appear.
Mm-hmm. When I'd read a study a while ago about how they'd asked a bunch of mothers whether they would rather their children were smart or popular.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them chose popular.
Yeah.
Which was kind of telling to me as well, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it also makes sense because, the smart kid isn't necessarily going to have a support network of people around to help them in times of trouble.
Yeah.
Right? So in a lot of cases, I mean, the pragmatism of, no, you'd rather that they had some friends around and just had their fun versus being the most intelligent person in the world.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the argument of, do you want to be part of the group? Do you want to be like included in the community, or do you want to be one that potentially leads the group but isn't in the group? You know what I mean? I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people would choose that, be like, I want to be surrounded by people, I want to have friends, I want to, and it's probably a more lonely existence to embrace the other side where it's, yes, okay, you're making all these decisions that are actually helping these people, but you're not necessarily as included. So I can see why that would be the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But again, now we're back to full circle. Are we suffering our own intelligence? Why do we have this developed if we're not going to use it? If we're just going to go back to choosing cow mentality.
Well, I think the clear answer is yes.
There you have it. The answer is yes.
Yeah, I really do think that the, and that's that was part of the article there was, is the human brain kind of uniquely designed for suffering?
Mm-hmm.
Because
I think we use it that way.
Yeah, like that's kind of one of the things that they talk about is how like animals don't necessarily feel suffering. Like they'll feel loss.
That we know of.
But it's not, it's not necessarily something where, they're going to just be in a depressive state for, right, like no reason, right? Like there's shit going on that causes them to be.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Versus them just being like, meh. I mean, although apparently, all animals apparently do go through their teenager phase. They're finding more and more now that dogs have a phase where they
they definitely do.
Right?
Anyone out there that's ever had a dog knows this very well.
Yeah, and so it was one of those things that they were just like, no, they don't do that. It's the right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They used to think that animals didn't feel pain.
It's the same as brain development in humans, right? Testing the boundaries, right? So I think all species probably go through that phase of just, what can I get away with?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's a sign of smarts. What can I get away with?
That's it, yeah. So, pushing boundaries, asking questions is a sign of intelligence.
Creativity.
Yeah.
Realistically. Problem solving, right? I mean, yeah, all sorts of...
Yeah.
All sorts of reasons why hooliganism is...
Yeah. Hooliganism nowadays is just rampant. Damn hooligans. Well, let's end it on that note, I suppose. Take-home message. Cows, good.
Moo. Find your moo.
Find your moo. Join the movement.
Yeah, I think that is definitely something that we really need to find in this day and age is just have that time for yourself. Have that time to just, contemplate your reality,
But not too heavily. Also, just enjoy your reality.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got their niche. Some people are good at contemplating. Others are just like, I don't give a fuck.
Well, I mean, like, contemplate in the sense that, like, there's more out there than just you. That's, I think, a good type of contemplation for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also, like, just don't get too crazy about it. Because that's what leads down for me anyway, the rabbit holes of, like, what should I be doing with my life? Right? Just enjoy your reality. Eat some grass. Smoke some grass. There we go.
Mm-hmm. Find your moo.
Yeah, find your moo.
Moo. We're going to call this episode Find Your Moo.
Definitely. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. Yeah.
That.
And
moo. That one. Don't forget that bit too. And the other thing.
Subscribe, like,
whatever this
share,
thing here is, make
all
sure
of that.
There.
I'm not editing floating subscription buttons. Stop trying.
It's over. I'll get it. I'm gonna find it.
All right, that's enough of that. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Have a great day.